All right. Well, welcome to the first of our monthly series titled Using Your Degree, which will explore the wide range of possibilities that await our students who are pursuing a degree in theology and religious studies. Throughout our series, we hope to introduce our students to both career paths and ministries that they might expect, like teaching high school theology, being a youth minister, or pursuing graduate level education, as well as to career paths and ministries which they might not have thought of, careers like journalism, diocesan work, young adult ministry, and more. Some of our presenters will be alumni of the Catholic University of America, but all are faithful professionals who help to build up the kingdom of God in their respective jobs and fields. And tonight we'll begin our series with young adult ministry. In the United States, young adult ministry has gotten special attention over the last few years or so, especially after the 2018 Synod on Young People, the Faith, and Vocational Discernment, and Pope Francis's subsequent apostolic exhortation, Christus Vivi. And did you know that there's a team of young adult ministers whose mission it is to provide feedback to the bishops, specifically on the state of young adults and young adult ministry, to help provide pastoral support to parish and diocesan leaders, and to develop a coalition of national young adult ministry leaders? Well, there is, and that's the purpose of the National Advisory Team on Young Adult Ministry, and we're joined this evening by two of the team members. And so first, I'd like to introduce Dianna Hancharenko. Dianna currently serves at St. Angelo Merici Parish in Youngstown, Ohio, as Pastoral Associate of Young Adult Ministry. She holds a bachelor's degree in communications from Youngstown State University and earned a master's degree in pastoral studies from Loyola University of New Orleans. Dianna serves the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Secretariat of Laity, Marriage, Family Life, and Youth as a committee consultant, and serves as chairperson of the USCCB's National Advisory Team for Young Adult Ministry. Dianna is also a member of the Stewardship Commission for the Diocese of Youngstown. Her passion for ministry with young adults and evangelization has led her to further service as a speaker, consultant, and facilitator throughout the country. Dianna, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be with you all.
And so next, I'd like to introduce Sean Allen. Sean is the Director of Young Adult and Campus Ministry for the Diocese of Fort Wayne, South Bend in Indiana. While working as an electrical engineer, Sean was evangelized by a parish young adult community, discerned a call to lay ministry, and then earned a Master's of Divinity degree from the University of Notre Dame. His relation to young adult ministry has included being an outsider, participant, volunteer peer leader, parish minister, diocesan minister, and National Advisory Board member. Sean, thank you for being with us.
Oh, this is great. Happy to talk about ministry.
And so what I've asked our two presenters to do tonight is just share a bit of their stories, of their experience, of what young adult ministry is, why it's important, and what it means for our students who are pursuing degrees in theology. And so I'd like to welcome Dianna to share with us about her career, its importance, its implications, and the role of theology and theological study as a young adult minister.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Brian. I really appreciate it. So I think what's important to kind of know here is I'll take you guys kind of way back in my story. I knew that I was being called to be a lay ecclesial minister actually when I was about 14 years old, which I know is kind of unusual for most people, and also recognizing that lay ministry in and of itself was a call. I grew up at a large parish, a large kind of suburban parish, and there were some really strong lay ministers there. And I saw them and I recognized what they were doing. And I said, I want to do that. And actually, I think at some point in my high school career, I called one of them and told them that I was going to have their job. And I ended up having it for some time. So that was, that for me was so important. And I had a really great pastor growing up who was a strong mentor for me. And as I got really active in the life of our parish, he gave me a lot of leadership roles and had me try some different ministries and things like that, just to get a vast experience. I actually, oddly enough, didn't do youth ministry until I was a senior in high school. And then, he told me go have some fun and go hang out with them for a little bit, which was great. But one of the things that, I had this conversation with him, and I'll never forget it because it was this pivotal point in my life. And he said to me very plainly, what do you want to do? That question that you always get as a senior in high school or even before, what do you want to do with your life? And I hesitated in saying what I wanted to do because for some odd reason, I just didn't know if I was allowed. And so I said, I don't know. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, you know what, Diana, he goes, you have a call to lay ministry. He said, and we need people like you to serve, to preach the gospel. And the minute that he said that to me, my life changed. And so I was able to, I met with him and I talked with him about what my career path, this path in lay ministry would look like. And so he told me, he said, go, to college and get an undergraduate degree in whatever you want. And then we'll talk about, your graduate studies, upon completion of your undergraduate degree. So I went to Youngstown State University, as Brian said. Go Penguins. And I ended up getting a degree in communications. And what was great about the degree in communications is that ministry is communication. And so I always saw this kind of strong connection between the two fields. And then, what ended up happening was a lot of my internship I was able to do at my parish. And also I was able to complete other assignments through the lens of the church, which made it very interesting. One of my supervising professors was an atheist. And so one of the comments that she wrote on one of my final papers was, I learned so much from you. My eyes have been opened. And for me, that was something that was really fascinating, that, here was this kind of secular, institution, this degree, and we were able to, to have some conversations and to look at, to look at ministry through the lens of communications. And I still use my communications degree all the time. So then after I graduated from Youngstown State, I started looking at programs for, my master's degree. I started teaching. In the meantime, I taught high school theology at a local Catholic high school. And, and that was a great experience. But I also needed something that was kind of flexible. So I enrolled in the Loyola Institute for Ministry. They had they call it, at the time it was LIMEX. So it was Loyola Institute for Ministry Extension. So I did most of my my learning through correspondence. And then we had a local learning group of other ministers like me, who we started to just kind of, we would meet together, we would do our readings, assignments, and classes, and then we would send our assignments and stuff off. And this was before Zoom, which, if you could imagine, and this is really before online classes. We were just kind of on the cusp of that really taking off and beginning. So that was really interesting. So I did that for 4 years, and then I ended up in that time, within, I think it was my third year, I moved from high school theology teacher to working in a parish. And I served as a pastoral minister of evangelization for 5 years. And then I really became passionate in that time, working generally in evangelization for young adult ministry. I had so many people ask me in that, where are the young people? Just that $1 million question. Where are people your age? What makes you so different? And I kind of made that kind of, I don't know, it just planted a seed in me that I just really became, very passionate about. I ended up taking a position in young adult ministry, leaving one in evangelization, although they are connected. And so I've been working for the last 5 years for another parish community as a pastoral associate of young adult ministry. And I think one of the things that my degree, so I have a master's degree in pastoral studies. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about that degree is it offers me a lot of flexibility, and a degree is a starting point. When you graduate with a degree, it's not an end, it's a beginning. It's kind of that level that you have of a base that you can pull from as you're going through different experiences. There's often times where I think of, oh my goodness, we talked about, this particular thing. We talked about this in one of my scripture classes. So things kind of pop up randomly that you can pull from that degree. So really think of it, we talk about graduation, you're done, you're over with. But once you have that degree, it really does serve as a base for you. And also in pastoral studies, we did a lot of practical theology, which in working with young adults has just made all of the difference, because you need practical theology. Most of the young adults that I work with are really, struggling to figure out what their place is in the church. They're struggling to figure out who God is in their life. And I have to make something kind of, I have to try to find ways of connecting it that it's not too heady, it's not too stuffy. So for me, that, being able to make things practical, to look at things in a very practical sense, to figure out ways of making God tangible, making God relatable in their lives. My degree really gave me a strong base in doing that. So, Brian, I don't know how I am on time. If I may have gone a bit over, I just kind of talked. So, yeah, but that's pretty much my story.
Great. Thank you, Diana. No, I think that was great. I think you, I think it goes to show, right, that there, in a sense, there's no one right path. I mean, you journeyed through your degree in communications and look where you are now. And it's to say that, as we're trying to show in these events, right, that there are so many different paths to get to where the Lord is calling you to be, and so many ways of living your faith and evangelizing, kind of regardless of where you're at, of being an active Catholic and living the lay apostolate. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Sean to share a bit of his experience and his story.
Thanks, Brian. And yeah, I do have to share my story as part of this, because I am actually the accessory of young adult ministry myself. Unlike Diana, I never planned to go into ministry. I would have laughed at you if you would have suggested it to me. I studied electrical engineering at the University of Michigan, and afterwards I got a job in San Diego, California, working on satellite telecommunication equipment. And at that point in my life, I was what I call an hour-a-week Catholic. I went to Mass on Sunday, I put in my time, and that's all that was expected of me, and so that's all I did. My faith didn't really play much of a role in my life outside of that hour a week of going to Mass. But I encountered young adults that were at my local parish who had been evangelized, had a living faith, a living relationship with the Lord, who, through inviting me to things, to activities, to a particularly one retreat, they were able to reach me and open my eyes to what faith really could be, what walking with the Lord really could be. So I became a participant in activities there. Eventually, after spending, I don't know how many months, I was invited to start to be a leader of the community. And I was just like, what the heck am I doing as a leader of this faith community? I'm an electrical engineer. I have no training in this. I finished CCD in the 6th grade. That was all the formation I really had. And I realized it also just wasn't enough. People, as a leader, people were looking to me to lead in multiple ways. We needed a Bible study leader, and who has the ability to lead a Bible study? And everyone's looking at each other like none of us felt like we could lead a Bible study. People were coming to me with personal problems, with struggles that they were having. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? I have no training to deal with this. So I was feeling like I just was not, although I was in that leadership position, I was not qualified or had the ability to really carry out what was needed for that leadership position. So the first thing I did, I started taking some courses through my diocese that were offered in the evening. You could get various certificates for youth ministry, catechetical, be catechist. For some other things, there was also the diaconate training classes. So I started taking some of those just because I knew I needed something. And those opened my eyes to even more, because this was the first time engaging in the faith as an adult. And my questions that I was bringing in were much different. And I was bringing a lot of the same questions that the people were bringing to me in the ministry. Problems of suffering, just some of the very nuanced teachings of the church that I didn't understand the nuances of. So that's when I first started thinking, like, all right, these courses at night are great, but I think God might be calling me to study a little deeper than this. And so ultimately, I did decide, I quit my job, decided to go into the Master of Divinity program at Notre Dame, but I didn't even have the prerequisites for that program. So I had to study some philosophy while I was still in San Diego. And so eventually I got into the MDiv program. And if you're not familiar with a Master of Divinity versus some of the others, I was sitting side by side in like systematic theology, scripture classes with people getting Masters of Theological Studies or Master of Arts of Theology. Sometimes we had some PhD students in our classes. While at the same, also we had our own set of coursework, which was really focused on various ministry and ministry skills, and pastoral counseling, things like that, that were very helpful for applying that theology in a pastoral context, in a ministry context. And that was what I needed. At the time, I wasn't sure what exactly I was going to do with the degree. I just know this is what the Lord was calling to me as a next step. While in the program, I discerned that God was calling me to give back to young adult ministry, and that my own path that was critical for my own path, and that there were millions more of people like me out there that were not being reached. Young adults, many of them were my friends that were not being reached. So this was never like a job. It was always something very personal to me, and really my vocation, the mission, being a missionary disciple. This was my mission field, right from the beginning there. So then, but what I also found was most places where young adult ministry was happening, it was either young adults were leading it themselves because there was no one overseeing it, or there was maybe a staff person and they're maybe had multiple hats, and one of them was young adult ministry. And really all it really was kind of social gatherings and connecting them, which is great and that's needed. But it wasn't necessarily a whole lot of evangelization happening, of reaching out to people who weren't showing up. And then those who were there, people didn't have the expertise, didn't have the theology to actually lead them deeper, to really dig into scripture, dig into, these issues. So that has always been my vision of what young adult ministry does. It has an evangelization and outward focusing part, but also for those who are disciples, a growing deeper part. And yeah, I guess one of my mottos has been learning to meet people where they're at, to involve them, but not leave them where they're at, and to continue accompanying them further. And that's where really that expertise of studying theology and pastoral ministry, what that allowed me to do versus what we were able to do as just a bunch of young adults with no background trying to lead ourselves.
Great. Thank you, Sean. And so now for those of you who are with us at the moment, we're going to move into a time of conversation and question and answer. So if you have questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. And while we're waiting for those, Sean, I think you just touched on a really important point, and something I'd like both of you to talk a little bit about. One of the critiques that I think all three of us have heard time after time about young adult ministry is that it's just events and socialization and really Catholic young adult dating. And so how do you as young adult ministers balance events in their necessity, right? Because we're not saying that events are bad, we're not saying they're evil, but how do we balance events with that personal accompaniment, with that care for the individual as well?
I think it's just how you described it, Brian. I think it is just a balance of, and one of the things that my pastor, that we talk about all the time, our approach to young adult ministry, is that we can have our events, but we can't stay there. There needs to be something more. There needs to be something, kind of beyond that. So part of what I see as my role as young adult minister at the parish is to accompany and to be an advocate. And to be encouraging and to really build relationships in ministry. I can't help accompany our young people if I don't know them. Everyone is gifted with something different. And so for me, just to say, okay, well, here are your options, have at it. The vast majority of the young adults who I have encountered at the parish have said, I didn't know I was needed. I didn't know I was wanted. I didn't know the gifts that I had could serve the church, could serve the Lord, that this was something that was wanted. I'm not interested in ministry, in kind of the typical sense, and doing what I'm doing, or the priesthood or religious life. So what does holiness look like for me? Where do my gifts and talents fit in? So a lot of what I do is help clear space for them. And thankfully, with having a supportive pastor, and, our community is open to many of the things that come up at, okay, so what are you interested in? What do you want to do? We've had a parishioner who's a young filmmaker, who came in, and he's like, can I make you guys a welcome video? I'm like, I don't know. Do we need a welcome video? And sure enough, we did. And he made it. And then now, like in the course of the pandemic, he was running all of our live streams. So that worked out really well. And he sees that as his call to service. We have other projects, and we have other things going on, that they have, the things have come up, and they're the first to step up in leadership. They're the first to step up in service. And I think that a lot of that is because now they know that they're wanted. Now they know that they're needed, and they don't have to fit into a typical, church person kind of mold of belonging to a specific group, or, just, kind of fitting in that way. Like we're finding new inroads for them. So I think that's been really integral into, the events are good. It's great that we build community, but where do we fit into, the larger body of the church, into the body of Christ?
Yeah, and for me, that question is almost like a false dichotomy, in that our events are designed to accompany people. For me, like, the way to think about it is, every time we hold an activity, it's, who is this for? Like, where are they in their faith journey? And then how do we walk with them, use this activity to walk with them to a next step for them growing in faith? And obviously everything we do has social components. People want to know who each other are, meet each other. And I go to a lot of weddings because I'm involved in people's lives, and young adults are getting married. I've been to 3 weddings in the last 5 weekends. But that's a fruit of all of the other things, of walking with them through activities that are helping them grow. So yeah, we may have a more socially oriented activity that is drawing a wide audience, and people can bring a friend who's never been connected, but we're leaving that activity with we've gotten to know someone new. We've invested in some time at that activity to get to know them as a person, and personally inviting them to something else that will be a next step for them to address their faith. Which may be like an alpha series or something geared towards people in the beginning. It could be something, if they're already a disciple, something that's really to go deeper. Maybe our annual retreat, or we have a evangelization training series. Like, what is it that's a next step for them, and walk with them to that next step and continue that journey.
Yeah, Sean, just to add really quick, I go to a lot of weddings too. And actually what was really cool was 2 weeks ago, we had 2 of our guys who came through young adult ministry, who I worked through in various capacities, were ordained to the transitional diaconate. And that was a pretty special moment too. So it's nice that's one of the good fruits of young adult ministry, is being able to be part of vocational discernment, and in all of its forms. And it's a really fun privilege. And yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah. So Amy asks, what is the average day like for you?
Pre or post COVID?
Maybe both. It might give a good insight into how things have changed for you.
Oh, goodness. Sean, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I work at the diocesan level, which is different. I have worked at the parish level also. So a lot of my day is we have activities that we're running. We have everything that we do. We usually do more larger events. They're larger in that there are a series, like a 10 weeks. We're doing a 12-week series right now called On Intentional Discipleship, which is our evangelization training. So, and then we have a team of young adults who I've worked with who are helping. They facilitate sessions. They facilitate small groups. They do one-on-ones with I have invested in them, and then they are carrying out a lot of the ministry that happens over this time. We also have maybe a weekend-long retreat or something, but we don't typically do just like this one event here, this one night, and then do another event here. That is happening at the parishes, and people can pop into those. The things at the diocesan level are typically a larger scale, like more people participating, as well as more than just a one-time thing. So there's a team. So I work a lot with the leaders, informing leaders to be able, for their skills, because these are people who have not had theological training, pastoral ministry training. So working with them to provide what they need, as well as lead the sessions. This evangelization, we actually developed that that's a homegrown thing that we developed here. So investing time into new programming that doesn't exist. We also, that have ministry with young adults, and I work with those leaders there. I also try to show up to those events to meet those people that are coming, because that's access to a whole different group of young adults around the region. I do, so it's also like one-on-one meetings with a lot of leaders, checking in with them. Sometimes young adults that have struggling, and maybe their parish, it's a volunteer young adult leader, and they've connected them with me so that I can help with the issue. There's a event focused part, which is more than just putting on the event. It's working with the leaders to do that. There's the parish support part, and then there is a part that's directly working with young adults as well and walking with them. That they may not be a leader, but they're whatever is happening in their life, or they happen to choose to come to me, I'm still walking with them at the diocesan level. And then COVID, actually right now, it does not look any different. It's just some things that we would be doing in person are now we're online during Zoom. I'm actually still doing the one-on-one meetings in person as often as they want to. Most of people want to do those in person because everybody's sick of Zoom. So it actually doesn't look incredibly different. In fact, some of the people at the parish actually have more time right now because things at the parishes look a lot different. And so I've actually been able to spend more time with some of the parish staff and people at the parishes.
Pre-COVID, my days were, I would hold office hours in the morning. So I would be at the parish office from usually about 8 to noon. And then my afternoons would be dedicated to building relationships. That was something that my pastor and I agreed upon. And that's part of his style. He's not, if you want to find him, you're not going to find him in his office. And so he kind of holds that same thing, for us, and as staff members. So, pre-COVID, I was, usually out for coffee with people or visiting other groups. That's when I would do a lot of my consulting and, things like that for other ministries. Being a parish minister though, but part of that for me is that I am the only parish young adult minister in my diocese. There are other people who are doing young adult ministry, but I'm the only one who is an actual paid staff person in a parish that my job is 95% young adult ministry. So a lot of people would kind of ask me, what was going on, that type of thing. Throw in national advisory team meetings and USCCB consulting stuff, that would kind of get thrown into the mix. So the afternoons were pretty random. And sometimes evening meetings at the parish. There was oftentimes long days. It was very important and something that my pastor always talked to me about carving time off. Usually Mondays were my day off. That's changed during COVID. And, so it was pretty random. And then, being at the parish too, there is some availability that needs to happen on weekends. Depending on what's happening at the masses, or depending on, if we're having an event, or if something, whatever's going on. So I have to be, pretty flexible with my schedule, and it gets challenging from time to time. And I do have to be intentional about taking downtime and making sure that, there is some time off just for my personal and spiritual health as well. Taking kind of taking care of myself in that sense. During this time of COVID, most of my stuff has moved online. And so I'm still working from home. So our office, because of our office style, we have kind of like a bullpen style office. And I also work with a lot of older people. And so our pastor has kept our office closed for business. We can come and go if we need to, if there's something, that we need there, or, something going on, but we are still to work from home right now. So usually in the mornings, I'm, answering emails, corresponding with people. As far as, the young adults are concerned, meeting with them one-on-one. It depends on their preference, kind of like Sean said, of, most of the young adults I work with do like Zoom or FaceTime, or, something along those lines. So we'll do that way, or we'll do something social distance outdoors, safe, along those lines. So it has been a pretty big shift, a lot more meetings online, which can be taxing, but it kind of is what it is. We're live streaming masses, and I'm helping actually, our filmmaker that I was telling you about. I assist him in doing some of our, some of the live stream stuff. So, so that's been different for me. And so to answer your question, long answer, but, short, there is no average day. And that's something actually I really like about it, is that, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to pop up. So there is a level of, it never gets boring. So it's usually pretty exciting, and there's always something coming up.
Yeah, and that was great, Diana. But just to add something, is also like, this is a question of what's your day look like. Ministry is a ministry that happens in evenings and weekends, because that's when young adults who are working during the week are available. So this is also something that sets it apart from a lot of other ministries, and just that the schedule is very different.
Yeah.
So I use my mornings often for personal stuff. I'm not a morning person, so I can sleep in, because I do have late nights often. But I get up and I run in the morning. I have some guys I get together as a men's group on another morning. And I do that stuff then. And then I'm working afternoons and into the evenings, pretty much Monday through Thursday.
Yep. That's pretty true. Yeah, it's not a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 world anymore, especially for our young adults. So that flexibility of timing is really key.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Amy. So Sam asks, what is the job application process like when the job you're seeking is so closely tied to your personal vocation for ministry? Did you get turned down for previous jobs? And if so, did this make you question your vocation?
I can, Sean, or do you want to go, Sean? Because I could take this too.
Go ahead. I have a unique story.
Okay. I have been turned down for more jobs than I've been accepted for. And various reasons. And in hindsight, I always thank the Lord for that, because actually the jobs that I've taken were not ones that I would have necessarily chosen for myself, but have ended up being the best possible scenario. So thank you, Holy Spirit. And so I think, I think, yeah, certainly, like, I've had moments, and I've had jobs that I've applied for, I've gotten my hopes up, and then, I interview, I think it goes really well, and then I don't get the job. And, of course that's defeating and crushing, especially if you think that this is, the path, but God will always provide something else. And it's better than you could have ever imagined it. I'll tell you just a super quick story. So actually this job that I'm in right now, at the parish I'm at, it's not a wealthy parish by any means. It's a parish that said that if we're going to get serious about our future, we need to get serious about young adults and young people. And so I had actually left my previous position at another parish without having anything else lined up. I was really at this kind of discernment process. There was a toxic work environment I needed to get out of. And so I quit that job in June. And, I said, Lord, I don't know where you're leading me. And I did question, am I done with ministry? I didn't know. And it was an honest question that I had to wrestle with and pray through and work through. And then, so, fast forward, it was September. I met my pastor now at a Newman Center retreat for Youngstown State University. I got called in to do that, and we had this kind of conversation that I really didn't think anything of. And then a couple days later, he called and he said, "I really want you to come work for me. Come to the parish. I'm not sure how I'm going to pay you, but we'll figure it out." And something in me knew that it was the right decision. And I believe that was the Holy Spirit. And I never would have picked that job. I never would have picked that parish. I had no clue that was, what God had in store for me and for my life. And it has been far beyond anything that I could have ever dreamed up for myself. Just the possibilities, the community there, all of those things. So I understand, disappointment is so hard. And especially if you have your heart set and if you think, oh my goodness, this is where the Lord is calling me. The Lord will always provide, and he will provide something better than you can dream for yourself. So have your hopes up, but keep your heart open, and realize that if this doesn't pan out, something will, especially if this is your vocation, if this is something that you really feel so called to do, God will always provide. Even though it's hard in the moment to see that, even though it gets really crushing sometimes, feeling that, it does always happen.
Yeah, I like that. God will, if that is the path God has called you on, he will provide the path ahead. So for me, as I said in my story, like while I was in the MDiv program, I discerned that I was being sent back to young adults, to reach out to young adults. And I went into it thinking like, all right, I could either do this, go back to San Diego, or maybe Chicago. That's another big city. I'm originally from the Midwest in Michigan. And so I was like, oh, I could stay near family and maybe get a job in Chicago, because there was young adult ministry jobs in Chicago. As Dan noted, there aren't many young adult ministry jobs out there at parishes, even at the diocesan level sometimes. So, but in prayer, God opened my eyes to say like, no, like I want you to do young adult ministry here in South Bend, Indiana, where University of Notre Dame is, because there was no outreach to young adults there. I had done my third year of the MDiv. I had done a field placement at a parish, specifically to start young adult ministry at that parish. So I approached that parish and said, will you hire me as a young adult minister? And they said, we don't have the money to hire you as a young adult minister. I had already been in contact with the diocese while I was there, because the diocese didn't have really a matured young adult ministry outreach. So I knew that. So I asked the diocese, well, will you hire me as a young adult minister? And they said, no, well, we have our staff and we're full. We don't have any more budget. And so I was like, all right, Lord, how's this supposed to work? If I'm supposed to be here and do this here, but there's no jobs here, how does this work? I did start looking around to some other dioceses nearby up in Michigan, and there just was no positions. I sent a resume just to send a resume because there's no job to send it to for. And it got right down to the end of like that year. Graduation's coming up. I didn't know what was going on. And someone from the diocese who was actually working in Fort Wayne, we have a geographically split diocese, up and left unexpectedly. And so I talked to them. I didn't want to go to Fort Wayne because I did want to be closer to my family. And so they said, well, we could move half of that position to South Bend. And it's like, okay, well, that's something. So I went back to the parish and said, all right, you said you didn't have the money to hire me. What about half of a position? And so they weren't even open to that, but the pastor said he would pray about it. And I checked back with him, and he came back and he's like, all right, I don't want what you started here. I don't want to see this go. Like, I want to see this continue. So we'll find a way to make it work. And so ultimately I worked full time for the diocese. Half my time was diocesan ministry in the South Bend area. And then the other half was at the St. Pius X parish in the South Bend area. So ultimately God provided a position for me that did not exist. And I never applied for it.
Great. And so we're starting to come towards the end, but Jacob asked a really good question, and so I think we'll end on this one. Do you do any outreach programs to facilitate interest beyond the young adults that actively participate? And I'm knowing you two, I know that you do, and so if you could give a little detail to that and to that importance, I think as well.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like for us, we don't do programs per se, but it's built into my job. It's built into my ministry. It's expected of me to reach out to young adults who would be on the periphery of our community, who either live, work, go to school, have some sort of connection to the parish, but maybe they're not active, or something along those lines. A lot of this does also include family members, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews of our parishioners. I know sometimes people forget about there's, sometimes those family connections, but I get approached so many times from a grandparent of, or a parent of, will you talk to my son or daughter, or my grandson or granddaughter, or, something along those lines, or I think they would like you. So knowing that they're not maybe the best person to facilitate their comeback to church. So there's a lot of connection there, but in terms of like interest beyond young adults, one of the things that we have going on at our parish is there's an old city park that's behind our parish that actually our young adults have reclaimed and have restored. It turned into this big kind of dumping ground for illegal dumping tires. It was really kind of nasty. As good stewards of the neighborhood, our young adults said we want to do something with this. And having a project like that is universally good. I think most young adults do have a heart for service. They do have a heart for wanting to be part of something good. That park has actually done more for us in terms of welcoming people in. We've been able to help welcome supporting groups, environmental groups, groups from the university, groups from other places that they have an interest in service. But they're not quite sure about the church thing. So just a super quick story. We invited a group actually from the university to come in, that this was an interest of theirs, doing environmental work, park work, that type of thing. We always provide lunch when we do park cleanup days. And so I sat and I had lunch with a couple of them, and, we got into conversation. They started asking questions about the church, about the community. Just kind of provided information, told them, you're welcome to come at any time. Well, guess who showed up to Mass the next weekend? And so that was really great. So all roads in. And so I think with any of our, we don't necessarily like, I'm not kind of a fan of like saying, I need to go out and pull you in because, I don't know, because that can just get awkward. So what I do is build relationships. And so if there's an inroad in, fine. I know that you're a really great cook. We're having a spaghetti dinner. Would you mind coming to help us out? We need help stirring the sauce, and I know you have good sauce, something along those lines. Again, going back to the gifts and talents of the young adults, building those relationships and having them come in. That's how the vast majority of our young people have come in, is through identifying some sort of gift and talent, plugging them in, and letting the Holy Spirit take it from there. So if you have an open community, if you're open to, some different people coming in and trying different things, that's pretty much what that our approach, but not a program per se, but just, making sure that we're clearing space and getting creative with how we're welcoming them in.
Yeah, that was great, Diana. It's about relationships, not programs, especially for those who are outside the regulars. So what we try to do is we actually work with our young adult leaders. We train them for evangelization. We train them to have conversations about faith with the people that are around them, their friends, their coworkers, family members. And they are the ones that are actually going out beyond kind of church structures and meeting people. And so any kind of programming we do are more or less the things that they could then accompany those people back to. So like Theology on Tap is something that exists many places, if not most places around the country. That has an environment in which someone can bring a friend who has not been to church in a number of years or is not even Catholic. And that's just a friendly environment that you can bring someone. And so in a sense, there is a program, but that program isn't by itself isn't going to draw people who aren't interested in it already. So it takes that personal invitation of others to bring people to that. But we have to also then have something for them to invite them to other than Mass, because Mass is not the first step for someone who is not Catholic and doesn't know what's going on, or maybe they were bored at Mass, which is why they stopped going to begin with. Inviting them back to Mass is not the next step for them. So we have to have things to invite them back to, as well as things like Alpha, which are designed, if you're not familiar with Alpha, like it is designed to have that initial proclamation of the gospel to someone without any assumptions. Doesn't even assume they know what prayer is. It doesn't assume anything. And so we have things that that next step for those people who have been not exposed to Christianity, have been away for a long time.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us tonight, Diana and Sean, and for sharing about your ministry and about young adult ministry as a whole. I've been blessed to work with both Diana and Sean for about the last year and a half or so. And they are truly a gift to me and a gift to our church as well. I hope this presentation and the Q&A that followed has helped to introduce you to or expand your understanding of young adult ministry, and that you might be open to working in this part of God's vineyard. Please join us for our next month's event, which will be detailed in an upcoming email if you are a major or minor in the School of Theology and Religious Studies, and can of course be found on the Nest. So always keep looking at our Nest events for our upcoming events. And so I hope you have a great night. If you would like to reach out to Sean or Diana, please just let me know. My email is just my last name at coa.edu, and I would be happy to put you in contact with them. Like I said, they're both great, and so they would be happy, I'm sure, to answer any questions and chat with you if there's more that you would like to know. So have a great night. Thank you so much for coming, and God bless.
Mm-hmm.